I've not got to use one of these yet. That's always up on you guys' dais. We'll go ahead and start. And I hope folks online are hearing me. It looks like I'm off of mute. Tonight's session is a second round opportunity for community to, second round opportunity for people to come in and ask questions about what's going on in the schools. We're aware that there's furlough days happening this year. We're aware that there is budget cuts next year. Two very impactful negative things going on right now in the schools. So part of this session is Q&A. I got one question submitted in advance that I'll address. And I think probably starting with just an update of what's happened in a week, probably a point to pick up. Gladly go back and discuss topics we've already addressed, repeat them, explain them again, whatever we need to do. And I'm here as long as we need the meeting to go. Since last week's meeting, probably the most impactful thing is going on is that we've had to go around and start providing the layoff notifications to people where we probably knew it was happening, giving them the specific who is going to be laid off in next year's budget so they have information so they can work through the remainder of the year and decide what their next steps are, rather than waiting until the school board adopts a budget at a June 12th meeting and have short notice about a layoff. The immediate problem with doing layoff notifications this week and trying to be out front and early is the budget committee, by its nature, has the ability to change the budget proposal that we turned in. And so as I've been talking to people this week about layoffs, we've been sort of prefacing all of it that right now we're 80% sure this is the way things are going. It does possess the ability to change if the budget gets redlined and circled and next by a budget committee and changes happen. And until June 12th regular board meeting, we're not going to have a budget document ready to be adopted. So that adopted budget is the legal spending authority that the district has once the board takes that action. Until that point, we're projecting, we're trying to put our best guess and use all the information we have at this point to try to set it up so that we think we have enough money to cover everything that we're going to be able to do next year, or enough people to cover with the money we're going to have next year is probably a more accurate way to say that. So the layoff components this week has been specific for individuals. It's always lose-lose. There's nothing good about any of that. And the fact that we're doing it early with a potential for change, and by change, maybe some positions get recalled, or maybe the budget committee acts differently and additional layoffs have to happen. We don't know until we have the spending authority authorized. Yeah, so that's probably what is most relevant for this week. We had one question submitted in advance, and I'll read it, and my business managers weighed in to give me some information so that we have an answer. And I don't think my business managers are online. They're scrambling. So I will do what I can to field questions. Hi, John. In the memo undated from Rachel Amos and Josh Cook, I wanted to know what were the capital expenditures charged to the grant dollars, see below. So the quote that was in the memo said, the intent was that those funds would carry us through the end of this fiscal year. The increased costs of some capital expenditures that were also charged to these grant dollars caused a shortage. Capital expenditures, we're talking about facilities and big projects on facilities, specifically things that were going on over last year and over the summer, the Highland office remodeling and the gym floors in the high school. The Highland office, when we started the project and got our quotes and began working to the time that project ended and we had all the bills to settle up, was what was a huge increase. And between contractors, between costs of supplies, all the elements in that Highland office project, they tell me $45,000 overage in construction costs, $20,000 overages in doors. We also had high school doors at $23,000 beyond what we were needing, projecting coming out of capital as well. The gym floor, again, the quote we got, they tear up all the wood and looking at the floor, decide that they need to level it before they can put the new floor back on and tack on $90,000 additional to that project. So those overages are unexpected and they charge, and when the gym floor is tore up, we have to put it back together. We're pretty much at the mercy of the contractor to finish that. Kind of the same way with the Highland office tore apart, we need to put it back together to run school, and some of the expenses that were not budgeted in the early quotes being tacked on the end cause overages, and that's what the references were in the memo. And Rhonda, that was your question.
That was my question.
Yeah.
The part also, where did the funds come from? Out of the general fund or out of those?
Specifically with those projects. Her question, can somebody online in the chat let us know if you're hearing people in the room's questions or if I need to repeat them? So I'll repeat it now, but if somebody could just type in the chat. She's asking what funding sources were causing or what funding sources were being used. Was it general fund or something else? And majority of the projects we set up were ESSER dollars, which were the federal stimulus monies related to COVID. We had a stated intention, and it didn't happen the way we stated it, that we weren't going to charge positions and staffing to ESSER because we knew that was limited one time. Here's the pot of money that the federal government's going to give us, and we don't want to put any staffing in there and have that unsustained source of income with a position that needs to be sustained. We had some issues with a business manager at the time who stuck 11 staffing positions in our ESSER dollars and left us right before the budget was due. And after about a year and unwinding and finding that we had 11 positions in there, we're a little unprepared. The district was going to spend down slowly and use attrition, and at the start of this school year felt we had a good plan to rewind those positions and look at people leaving, to not have to make a sudden drastic change in our staffing levels to slowly take care of that overage. A recent shortfall from the state holding back money caused a shift in how we had to do that, a reprioritization. That shift led to the furloughs, and it's going to lead us to having to take those positions out next year in addition to a couple others. So it was federal money, and most of the projects and expenses were supposed to be one time. The term we were using was one-offs. You don't do a gym floor every year. You don't plan on that. So if we can use a grant source essentially and pay for it and hopefully save our general fund, that was the intention.
Could you get it again?
ESSER? ESSER was specifically related to COVID relief. There are other grants. I've heard about people in the community who are starting to do some letter writing campaigns and trying to elicit some some other sources or do grants. So there are other grants, ESSER specifically, no, and ESSER was a lot. There was so much that they kind of held that against us when they planned out state school funding. They said, well, everybody got these ESSER dollars. We're not going to pay as much of our state money into schools this year because you got enough from the feds. But the indirect of that is that became the new base for previous years. So instead of growing at the right rates to account for costs, they essentially skipped a year on us because they said the federal government covered it, but the federal government hasn't filled it in since. And I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, keep going.
Please note comments, enter the meeting. Oh yeah, so yeah, I'm going to try to watch for questions on the chat as well as in the room, but otherwise, as long as we're civil about asking, we can absolutely just do away. So go ahead.
My next question is how do you expect the school to be run next year with these furloughs and cuts and everything?
Next year, there's not a plan for furloughs. So the intention is the state has told us, here is your new revenue expectation. You need to now expect that your revenues are going to operate like this. And so the budget proposal we put in has a lot of cuts, but all the cuts keep us within the new norm of our revenue sources. And so we will not be furloughing, laying off beyond what we need to do to be at the right point to start the school year. We have a much lower revenue amount than we have to, but by making these cuts this year and this furlough to get through the year, we don't want to be doing this anymore. We will have to make an adaptation. So your question was, how are we going to survive the day-to-day classroom when all of these supports is suddenly yanked out? And that is the most important question. And I don't think we have that answer. We're losing enough staffing that I think every department, every classroom, every office is going to be feeling the burden of all the same work still existing and fewer people to do it. And when you lose a lot of support staff, because we still have the state requirements to help students graduate. So English, math, social studies, science, the core instruction still has to happen. So a lot of the support elements that make those things better become things that get peeled away. So the supports that the students are relying on or that help the teachers do more, do better, not being available, that's going to be a huge impact. And the principals and the staff in the building redesigning how they do school is, it's going to look very different. This is very similar to where we were at in 2018 when I first got here. We've been trying to add positions, and I feel like we're right back to 2018 numbers, and school operated, but we were trying to build, and now we're cut back to levels and going to have to either start over or live within a new normal. Steve?
First, I'd like to introduce myself and then provide you some information that I got today from some students. My name is Steve Lund. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Roseville, and many years with Rotary and heavily involved with the Rotary Club of Roseville down in Sacramento, where we had a scholarship program that was dynamite. Of course, here, we're a club of 20 members versus over 100 down there, so dynamically different. Our program here, we expect to give 5 scholarships out. One which will be through a past graduate of the school. So continuing support after to get them through 4 years, and 4 new graduates this year. And today we held our annual scholarship review. So we spoke with 4 students today. And before I go into what I what they said that I think you'll find interesting. I should also say that I'm a Band-Aid. Now, that means I'm an aide to the band leader in the local school.
A
When I
Band-Aid.
made my name tag out, they said Band-Aid, so I was gonna bring it tonight, and I forgot to do so. I'm a volunteer at the high school. I go over on Monday and Wednesday, and I teach woodwinds, and I brought a friend of mine who's in a band, and he teaches the trumpets and trombones. We, just as of Wednesday, we added a bass clarinet to our band. The band is now made up of 10 members. And so we're getting a band started.
Good.
This is something that the superintendent wanted to see happen, and the athletic director wanted to see happen, and we're making it happen.
Nice.
Now, obviously, with all this financial concern, we're concerned about our future. Very important that this continue, and it's been my experience. Well, forget my experience. Let me tell you what the kids' experience was. We asked them today, what do you know of the financial problems in the district? Well, of course, everybody does. Now, he said, we understand that you're not administration, you're not the board, you're not the budget committee. You don't have those kinds of answers. But from a student's perspective, what do you think should be done about this problem? It was interesting to me because all 4 of those students were quite articulate. And although they said the same thing differently each time, they all said the same thing. And they all started with athletics. I was involved with the football team, one guy said. Another one said, I was with the volleyball team. And the stories went on. And it was probably the most important thing that I did in the last 4 years of my high school experience. It's just great that we've got these programs going on, and they're so excited about it. Teamwork, new friends, all of these sorts of things, and they were, universally excited. One person mentioned theater, another art. And when they said art, I said, would you include music in that? Absolutely. See, my experience was the same. They went out of their way to say that, all of these students were 3.7 GPA or higher, these 4 students we saw today. And they all said the same exact thing in different words. They said, there's a lot of kids on that football team or that track and field team or whatever that wouldn't even be in school if it were not for that activity. And my personal experience, I can tell you that I've got a band member whose brother was permanently kicked out of the school, and he had all but one demerit. I don't know what you call it in the school district, but he was one short of getting kicked out himself. He walked around with big sagging pants, a black hoodie over his head, a baseball cap, never looked at you could never see his eyes. You should see that kid now. It's a miracle. He laughs, he tells jokes.
Yes.
Excuse me. That clarinet has changed his life. It's made a tremendous difference. And that's what the kids were all saying today. So these programs, the thing that should also be directly stated is one of the kids said, and there's a lot of kids that don't go to school here because these programs didn't exist. They go other places. I'm really amazed at their awareness of these things. Nobody said anything about Elkton, but they said kids are leaving this town and going to school elsewhere because they have these programs. Should I wait? Should I wait for him?
I think there's an emergency at the high school.
Thank you for your time, your
Yeah.
volunteer time.
Yes.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, we've been wanting to get the band back.
Sorry, just
And-
wanted to let you know he's responding to an emergency. The fire alarm went off again at
Oh.
the high school. It happened earlier today. So he will be back as soon as possible.
Thanks, Charlene.
Thank you.
I've already told him what I'm sharing with you, so I'll just continue and finish up. I have a band rehearsal at 7 o'clock down in North Bend, so I've got to move along. But the point is that these kids really knew how important these various programs are. And although they're, particularly the band is in the incubator stage of these things, they need to continue.
Oh, yeah.
And so I asked, the board that we're interviewing, well, what should be done? And they said, well, They also the same thing, don't fire teachers. Well, I said, you can't make the budget work, you don't fire teachers. Shorten the school day, reduce the compensation and reduce the school day so that we have all our great teachers and all our great programs make this make sense for the kids. If we have to go to school less budgetarily, that's fine. But if you start cutting the programs out, it's going to ruin the school. And that was the primary message that I wanted to share with you, because that's what the kids are saying.
Shorten the day.
And I don't know, I probably step over the line when I say this, but the tail should not wag the dog.
Right.
This board and administration needs to make decisions on how to marshal the assets and use them. That includes teachers, that includes capital budgets, that includes classified employees as opposed to certified employees. That's the whole, all those things relate to choices that need to be considered in order to keep the programs that you have going. And having said all of that, I'm going to say one other comment. The people who are trying to build that band, if it's eliminated, will still be here. And we're still going to work on that band. And we're going to do that whether the school supports us or not. If that means just give us a key to the room. If that means, no, you can't have the room, but you can use the instruments and music, we'll find a place in school to do that. We don't intend to allow the hard work of the last year and a half go by the boards. It's been too important. The kids are the only mission for this district to manage. Not the teachers, not any other aspect of the school district's important, just the kids. And the kids have spoken today. The brightest and the best of them spoke today, and I'm sure that if the other kids who don't fall in that class of GPA, let's say, heard what was said today, I think they would agree. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
hearing.
I had a question for you.
Yes.
Is, if the Rotary Club took it over,
If what?
if your club took over the music program per se, what about the teacher who teaches music, their salary?
If his name is Larry, if Larry found himself with no job, he would still teach 4 days a week at the school or elsewhere, with or without the support of the school district. And that goes for myself as a Band-Aid and my friend who's also a Band-Aid.
Thank you.
Yeah, he
And
played with Wild Horse Theater.
Pardon me?
He played with Wild Horse Theater in Winchester Bay.
Oh, yeah, the
It's quite a
band
band.
leader is a retired rock and roll,
Yeah,
big time rock and roll drummer.
yes, I've heard that.
back in the 80s, they finally moved him to Vegas. They were very good. They were the best that anybody here ever heard. I mean, you have no idea why they didn't make it, but well, I guess they wanted to do they didn't want to have to answer to anybody. They wanted to make it on their own. No, we don't want to do this. We don't do that. So they just kind of let them stall out. And then the Six Boys, they passed away and away it went. Yeah,
Larry is a genuine miracle from my perspective, because, drummers don't read music, most drummers.
right.
And Larry doesn't read music. And here he comes in as a music teacher, unable to read music. And yet his skills at dealing with the kids are extraordinary. And when I showed up one day, he said, would you mind helping me out a little bit? So I taught him how to do this and a lot of other things. And he's going past me now. I mean, he is working his butt off to get all that technical knowledge that's needed. And he has the kids 100% behind him. And I might add one other thing. I can't say that this is the case. I can only say that I think it is the case. But I think the band was used as kind of a dumping grounds for kids that didn't have any place to go. And wow, let's put this kid in there and see if they can play a horn or play it, you know. And so we've had probably half the kids that have gone into that room have left because they would not sit still. They would not behave.
Yeah.
It was absolutely impossible to get the behavioral problems under control. And that was a very difficult process, weeding through those that would not, for those who would. And those who would found out that they would. They didn't know that at the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's been a great experience for all the kids who are playing in that group to see how that's come about.
Do you have more kids that are interested in joining the band? I mean, seriously interested?
Excuse me. We don't know that. We are actively looking for and in the process of developing a communication with John to figure out how we can go to the classrooms and promote the band and start a new group of kids. See, normally you start music at 5th grade, and by the time you get to high school, which is normally 9th grade, you have 4 years of experience. You can go right into a band and play.
Right.
Well, this bass clarinet player didn't know which end of the bass clarinet to put in his mouth.
Yeah.
But I'll have him playing remedial music within a month or so, certainly by the end of summer, and I will be meeting with him all summer. By the time we get to next year, he will be playing the bass clarinet just fine.
That's great.
Yeah, the board was thrilled to hear we had a band.
Sorry
Charlotte?
to interrupt. John said that he will be back in about 10 to 15 minutes. If you could wait, he appreciates your grace. If you can't wait, if you have questions that you would like to give me, I'll make sure that they get to him. I can give you my email address. You can send them to me. If you are wanting to wait, as I said, there's water cups in the hall behind you there, bathrooms as well. If I can get anything for anybody, please let me know.
Thank you, Charmin.
I had an uncle that couldn't read a note, but he could play anything. Had strings on it, didn't matter.
Will you as a board answer a couple questions right here, or?
Let me add something first to what you were saying, Steve, and that is the interest that you are trying to cultivate and have cultivated, it sounds like, in band and the arts and drama at the junior, senior high school level. That really needs to start at the elementary level.
Absolutely.
And it would make your job easier because you would have people that are already, you know, experienced in those areas. And the interest is there. The kids, we used to have, Bonnie, you know.
Yes, I do.
Drama, we had a group called the Melody Makers, and the teachers were the ones that led these groups on their whatever free time they ever had. But we had art, we had second languages, all those things. And then just went directly with what the high school kids are saying, that they like, they want, they need. And so I don't know how you keep all that going, but I think some of the priorities need to be rearranged in this district because those things are always the first to go. And they're also the things that keep kids in school because there are a whole lot of them that academics isn't their thing. So maybe it is band, learning, you know, how to play an instrument or playing the drums or speaking a second language or cultivating their artistic ability. Those are critical, but they really need to start at the elementary level.
We used to have some great programs at Highland. Yeah, we did.
One of the students that we spoke with today, her mother is the music instructor at the elementary school. And what they are doing is they're hitting on learning some music history, and they're beating on some drums, and they're playing some wind flutes or something, but there's no beginning clarinet or trumpet or anything
But
like that.
it gets that interest going for the next step. Even if they're playing kazoos, I mean, you know, anything.
They do have a remedial program for kindergarten through 5th grade.
Yeah, that would be the elementary. K through 5.
That school
It's
goes
K
down
through
to
5.
6th grade, doesn't it?
No, it's K through, well,
Sixth grade?
K-
no, now it is
It's K6
Yeah, it
now.
used to always be K through 5. It's K through 6.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
So all classes in that school are getting some introduction to music, which is good. but it has to move to the next level because
Sure.
what you end up with, if you end up with, let's say, 10 new students learning from scratch, which into the instrument to put in the mouth this year, and your seniors are graduating 4 years later, you never get a whole band. Because what you end up with is a beginner's class, and then you end up with a band, but all of the instrumentation in the beginner's can't mix with the other ones. So you end up with two completely different groups. And that's a real serious problem for developing a good musical program.
Well, yeah, I think if you start exposing them at the kindergarten level and keep adding to it, and then when they get to 7th and 8th at the high school, still at the high school, then
They should already be playing
Yeah.
music by then. Yeah, that's right. It's hard to propose such a thing under the circumstances, but I believe it's possible that there's enough volunteerism in this community that if the kids in the lower grades were given resources, and that's another problem. This is a very poor neighborhood, our community. Well, I came from Roseville, California, which is totally the other way. I don't think anybody had income less than $100,000 in that town. And if you were going to get into the music program, your parents went out and got you a clarinet or a trumpet or whatever. Here, we had a young man who wanted to play the alto sax, and we had two of them, and neither one of them can play. And we can't get them fixed because that costs money. So we talked to the parents. Well, they agreed to pay $25 for the rent of a unit, and then with various charges, it came to $35, and they said they couldn't afford $35 a month for the child to play an alto sax. And that's when we dug up the Barrett, the bass clarinet, and the bass clarinet is in good order, so he's going to learn to play bass clarinet.
Oh, good.
So you can't start a band without some form of resources. Cost
Tell John about what the kids had to say.
Pardon me?
I tell John about what the kids had to say.
he was here.
I gave a very abbreviated talk at Rotary today so that John could hear what I was thinking, and then he invited me to come tonight and share it with you. So he knows the kids think teachers should not be fired, teachers should work less, that make the budget fit. And that way the kids get all the teachers and all the program resources just in an abbreviated format. And it's the only thing that we're here for is the kids. We're not here for the teachers. We're not here for anybody else. We're here for the kids, and everybody needs to bust their ass to make that happen, right? And then you're gonna tell me state law doesn't give you a lot of choices and contracts and all that sort of thing.
We have an outcome end game of taking care of our students.
Okay,
and
I
our
speak
schools
up.
are for. Our outcome, our end game is always going to be students. And to do that, state law requires you to have a superintendent for a school. And then after that, it says you've kind of figured out that's what your superintendent does. And I can't do it alone. I need all the staff we have doing all the jobs they have, and as many services as we can give to students as we can possibly put out there. And our opinion that when we've got 2 or 3 kids interested in an idea or a club or an activity of some, trying to find an adult who will join them and serve kids right down to the smallest groups that we have, I absolutely consider my staff right along with the students, because none of this would happen for the students without the staff. And teachers are going to change a lot of what they do next year. From the last 3 years, they're going to be doing things that they're not typically having to do because there's fewer supports around them. So we're going to have to work together and figure out what those changes look like and how to make the outcome of students being successful still the most important thing. But I need them all. I want them all back. So this is all not very good. We've been building for 4 years, and now we're right back to 2018. And we're right back to a lot of really hard work.
What services do you have ESD providing right now?
ESD, what services do we have the ESD providing right now? And then there was a question online I'll come back to. The primary thing that we're getting out of the ESDs right now is special education. Our Douglas ESD partner, we have some technology and internet service. We have some HR service out of we currently have some HR services out of our Douglas ESD. We currently have some website and communication services out of our Douglas ESD. The South Coast ESD that we're assigned to is special education, and that includes communication, augmentative communication, occupational therapy, physical therapy. We have nursing. Cold call off the top of my head, trying to remember all the pieces. There's quite a bit.
And what are you paying them a year for all those services?
Lots. Want to make sure, is it 7.5 or 15? I think it's about 15% of our general fund. I think we're about 1.5 million in, but part of me is thinking it's only half that, and I can't remember why off the top of my head. It's either 750 or it's 1.5 million. It's significant, and a lot of that is contracts for personnel. And when you only need occupational physical therapy a couple hours a week, you can't get that on your own because the person doesn't want to do it. So we go in consortium with everybody else in the ESD. And if I buy a couple hours and the other schools all buy a couple hours, it adds up to a full-time person. And that person's job is to go around and provide those services. That's how that works. But the rates of, occupational therapists and communication speech therapists, those are medical professionals. And so they command really high salaries. A nurse, I know that off the top of my head, is $140,000. And I think right now we have 3. And when you have specific needs to serve through nursing services that are vital, and you have to address those constantly, you get a high volume of nurses, and that's very expensive.
Are you sourcing, are they also doing your payroll and that kind of stuff?
Oh, we have our business manager, that was Douglas ESD and now South Coast ESD. Yes, that's one of them.
And your accounts payable, and accounts receivable?
We have an AP person in the district. The business manager is the contract that we have. So we do part of it in-house and then get the contract for the business management.
So what do you have in-house here?
We have half-time AP. And so that person's just putting in all the requisitions and getting them pushed uphill. The office manager started a requisition, usually for a teacher, comes up to AP, can enter it, business manager looks it over, and once we've had multiple sets of eyes on it, then I can approve, and then we can order, buy whatever the request is.
So that's all you have is one person here?
Half-time.
A half-time person?
Yeah.
Is that part of your, because you have an assistant finance manager and a finance manager that's reported on your budget, your proposed budget.
Yeah.
So
The service we provide is a set amount, and it's been the set amount. This year, the South Coast ESD, I'm aware, has picked up other schools, and they've had to hire other people to do business management for them. So Rachel Amos is the director of the department for the South Coast ESD. She started out for the South Coast ESD as our business manager. When they added more schools to their rules and requirements, she had to hire help. So Josh Cook is one of the assistants in her department, and she is transitioning him to be the business manager for us, and she'll have oversight of her department. And so we'll eventually only be paying Josh. But right now, they divide, however they're dividing that amount amongst the people that
Were
work for
those
us.
two paid through ESD or do you pay them directly?
We pay the contract. And the South Coast ESD pays them their salaries based on however that's scheduled out. They have their own collective bargaining agreements and their own contracts.
So next year, there will only be one of those people?
I think Rachel's been with here almost now since 2018. She'll probably keep some oversight. She wants to be sure that the handoff is smooth. She's always taken care of Reedsport for us. But she wants Josh to take over so that she can also pay attention to the other schools that she's serving. I believe she's got a second assistant, who I don't remember her name, a woman also doing the same work for some of the other schools, and she's kind of watching all of them and picking up a little herself. So as she feels comfortable that Josh is handling it and everything is moving along correctly, she'll probably hand it off more and more to him. But it's not a double cost. It's the contract rate, and she is value added, I guess, on that until she feels comfortable that he can handle it at the level that she would expect.
So with the cuts that you made today on your assistant aides, how many admin were cut today?
We have one admin position cut.
And do you feel that there's going to be more?
I don't think so. I have 2 building principals, myself, remaining in the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for coming.
In the last week, or whenever the meeting was, I can't remember, you mentioned that about the furlough days. I'm hearing that their school is, not the whole school, but the auditorium's going to be open during those furlough days. Is that correct, for a class?
Auditorium open for a class?
Yeah, over at the high school for the theater class.
Behavior class. Head Start has talked to me about being open, and I think they've decided if they're going to furlough.
But the drama class is not going to be at the school?
I cannot tell them that they have to work, and I would advise them that because they're not being paid, that they're not required to work. Teachers come in on Sundays and they work, and they're late in the evening. So they have keys to the building. We would check them out and we let them accomplish the work they try to do with the time they have available. I'm not going to bar the doors. We're going to have state playoff baseball, it sounds like. Our team is doing pretty well, and the OSAs has an expectation of our participation, and the other team that's going to play has an expectation. Those stipend jobs are not furloughed. We don't really have a way to furlough a stipend. So those people are expected to work. The efforts of putting at the gate and the supervision all have to be out there, because even though there's people taking their furloughs, we can't just ignore the fact that there's a state playoff game. There's just an expectation. So I'm not going to bar and chain everything off and say you can't any more than I would on a Sunday when folks are coming in and doing their work.
Isn't part of the furlough days, I mean, when you're trying to save the money, you're still got the electricity going.
Yeah,
I mean,
most of the furlough factor has been the staff. It's the $32,000 a day is coming out of all of our paychecks, and everybody got hit.
Are you aware of any other districts comparable to Reedsport size, student-wise, that are furloughing this year
Not furloughing.
or laying off?
Layoffs, yeah, there's majority of folks are doing some sort of reduction cuts.
Right now.
Right now, we're not laying off right now. We only
Well,
furlough.
we're furloughing
Yeah.
for 2 weeks, so.
Most of the layoffs,
A loss of pay.
yeah, most of the layoffs around the state. I'm not sure which specific ones our size are doing any immediate layoffs.
That's what I'm hearing.
And I think the math for us, if we would have done immediate layoffs, we would have lost more school days than the furloughs. The number of staff to lay off immediately to get us to our ending fund balance for the year would have shut us down about 20 days. And that would have been 20 days of instruction versus 8. it was two bad choices to have to make from.
But my question is, what are other districts doing and why are they not in the same bind that we're in right now?
Their revenues are in different spots. Each soup that I've been talking to, and we had our COSA meeting off the record Friday. The number of people in these positions, like Jervis is trying to pass a bond, and if they don't pass the bond this May, this upcoming election, their school district is shutting down. And they're exactly our size. And they're going to become Woodburn. So I don't know. I mean, that's a whole different type of mess. I don't even want to have to deal with, and I feel bad for Dandy. And in that situation, they're exactly our size. Most of the ones who are making the headlines are bigger areas that have newspapers.
Sure.
So, you know, when I was on the one virtual call, Wallowa's 600,000 and Triangle Lake is 800,000. Those are both very small schools, very comparable. One in Eastern Oregon, one kind of up in the Eugene area. I was talking to Michael. What did he say?
And so what are they doing at this time of year?
I don't know that either one of them said. They were talking about the amount of money that they had to deal with, and they were most of the call was frustration with the suddenness that the state made this change of notice to us. A lot of us were very disappointed in the communication and the way that stuff that should be expected and predictable has suddenly become volatile and unpredictable. And then the communication along with it is pretty blasé. You know, when they're saying, well, it's only $600,000, because they're thinking important public types of issues in their formulas. $600,000 to us, that wipes out programs. That's huge in small schools. So the blasé attitude of formula errors, and it's not a big deal to communicate things and to be predictable or even reliable. It's upsetting.
We've been here before.
Yeah, it
Many
goes
times.
around.
But in the past, if my memory serves well, the cuts were always made for the next year. It wasn't a mid-year type of thing where, you know, everybody's in turmoil and you've got people that now will not come back, I'm sure, which leads me to another question. And that is the rate of staff resignations that we've had in the last 5 years. And we can't, COVID is an issue, I understand that. But these aren't people that are leaving the profession, like in other areas where they've had it, I can't deal with the COVID situation. These are people that are continuing in education, but going elsewhere. And why is that? Why are we not looking at that? Because it's been a large number.
I'm sitting here, most of the interviews that I've had with people leaving have been reasons that are their personal choices. If they've left and moved on to other jobs, haven't had and maybe an independent person might hear something different. I'll accept that. Maybe that they tell me the answer. Sure. But none of the interviews of people leaving have been about a problem as much as a personal circumstance that they're shifting for themselves.
I think a lot of it is having to disclose things that probably they don't want to disclose, but even mid-year, we've had resignations mid-year, which to me is unheard of.
Yeah.
And again, those are not COVID related.
We have to stop blaming COVID for everything.
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to blame it for everything, but you just can't. Got to move on.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand people leaving the profession because of COVID. I don't think I could go into the profession right now. It's changed so much, but the people that we have are so devoted, and I know they want to stay, and they pour their hearts out. And I said this at the last meeting, I do not believe they feel appreciated for whatever reason.
Or supported.
We're supportive. And I'm guessing that that's why we've had so many resignations over the last 5 years.
And then to add on to that, when they resign, then we have a hard time getting teachers back here that are certified. And you said in the last meeting that our money comes from enrollment and certified teachers and their hours.
Years of experience, yeah.
So, do you not think that plays a part in that? I mean, so your staff, I mean, your principals hire your staff, their staff, is that correct? Or do you do that?
The principals.
So if they are not hiring teachers with hours that are certified, that has something to do with the money that we're receiving, correct? So are your principals not hiring the right people? Or are you not getting the right applications? Because we have had a decline in certified teachers. We have a lot of teachers that are not certified right now. I'm not saying anything bad against any of them. But
They all have licensure. It's different types of licensure. The decreased years experience is probably the element I think you're referencing, that when a person who's lived here their entire life and then they retired takes 30 years experience with them, and we hire somebody new with no experience, you go from a 30 in that average down to a 1. We've had some big swings. All the teachers we have teaching classes have licenses from TSPC. We've had some that we've grown.
Good morning.
It's a grow your own model.
I'm going to cut these kids and these teachers by 8 days. Just nobody did that. Right. Yeah. No. Said nobody.
You can hear part of the information. And
he was just talking about it, which I did because their
Right.
SRO up in that school district was talking to our SRO. And
are you
what
talking
is
to
it
the
called?
group?
Not Estacada. Somewhere up by
Okay. Hey,
Beaverton.
Cindy, can
There's
you
a school
mute,
district. And
please?
if their levy does not pass in May, that whole school district.
I'm sorry.
She's not hearing us. I'm going to try and see if.
Oh, I think it's muted now. I apologize, Kim. I lost my train of thought.
back to, we were talking about the, your principals hiring
Hiring and, yeah, the years experience. So when somebody retires with 30 years experience, we hire somebody new in the profession, or the grow your own models that I was going for. One thing I've learned about our South Coast area, and other soups kind of relay, the number of applications we get in total. When I worked over on I-5 and I was sandwiched between U of O and OSU, we get 20, 30 applicants every single time, just because the volume of larger areas and to universities. And I've seen much, much smaller applicant pools since I've moved over here to the coast. And from day one, I've seen a pool of applicants beyond 10. And I think most times I'd say less than 5 easily, like the majority of the time. So the numbers of people applying for work has been an issue for us to overcome. We ask questions, what makes it difficult to be here? And housing is a big issue for people wanting to even apply over here. And in some cases, remoteness. And the coast isn't remote. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to do here, but the distance off I-5 for some people from colleges or whatever, I don't know. But this area has a more remote element to it, and application pools have just been really small. So when they get 1 or 2 applicants and 1 or 2, and one doesn't even have a license, the limitations on who you're selecting can be pretty finite. We could probably spend lots of monies and hire headhunters and go out and try to make the big sweep, but then you're putting out a lot of money on the hope that somebody will come in and move. We got a really good PE teacher my first year, came out of California, moved up here with his girlfriend, and I know from his expression in a conversation, and I like the guy, he didn't realize that Reedsport was as small as it was and as remote as it was, and he was gone in a year. He didn't do his research. Other people, when they move here, probably have a tie to the area, or they're generally able to find housing. So there have been elements that are reported to us that make it difficult for people to want to apply. So the application pools are smaller. One thing then that we've tried to adapt with is we call it grow your own. I'll point to Amber Foster, and I'll say her name because I think she's a great teacher. Started out as an IA and went into teaching certification programs to become a licensed teacher. So she was an IA, she's living here, she was in the building for a long time. Somebody saw potential and said, hey, Amber, we think you'd be a great teacher. She got into a program and we supported her there, and now she's in a classroom. And so, but that's a first-year teacher and somebody with good skills and abilities. And she's been with us a couple of years now, but her average year's experience is low. They don't get any credit for years of experience in an IA role. So our drop in years experience has impacted us. If we're only able to hire new people out of college, or we grow our own, our number in computing that average is going to stay low for a while. I think the state average is 12. And I think ours is 7.
Years experience.
Average years experience.
And I don't see any problem with that. Sometimes the newest people that are coming on board, you know, they've got more energy in many cases, but they need some mentoring and they need ongoing support. And I wonder if the district has earned some kind of a reputation where people, in addition to the remoteness, which I know has an impact on some folks, but there's word out there that, you know, either we don't have the programs that people want, so they, you know, they go to Elkton or wherever they go, or they don't feel supported, or the staff is unhappy, whatever it is. Does that have anything to do with why we get so few applications beyond just being remote? Because some people like the remoteness, or they come to the coast because it's a beautiful, naturally beautiful area. So you have that too.
I know somebody that's a licensed teacher here in town that moved here, and her husband works here, but she wouldn't apply just because of what she's heard about the lack of support and she says, I'm so glad I didn't apply there. She had intentions of coming here, and her husband got a job here and applied, and she refuses to apply. And that's
sad because I think we've got a great staff. We've got some great students.
We do have a great staff.
We do.
And we do have good students.
And you want to keep them.
And yeah, you want to keep them. And you have to support those people, and they're not getting it. It's huge.
When I've asked some specific questions about, give me some examples of where the support is not, and I don't want to tie it to an individual name, what would be a thing that here's the outcome that this would show, this would be the support that we're hearing people say isn't present? What specific things are lacking that account as support? Because that lack of support is a pretty broad term, and until there's specific things to take action on, it's left up to interpretation about, well, I think this is someone's support. Well, maybe it's not what people are actually wanting because it's not specific and somebody's trying to guess to figure it out.
I go back to the environment that's created in each school, in the district as a whole, where people feel welcome and comfortable being there. Parents, teachers, kids, and there are ways to do that, but it doesn't sound like it's being done, and it's not all up to the principal. It has to come from within and from at the top as well.
And then I would love to take action on items. If there's something specific that you're saying, this is the area that is not being supported, or that is not the welcoming element. I can fix what I can guess about, and I can work on things to fix. And if there's something specific that I can work on, that's much more useful to try to solve the problem.
Without mentioning names, that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And your staff is, they're fearful, so.
This this week is been a nerve-wracking week because we are aware of all the layoffs and deciding to finally get people specific answers to whether or not it impacts them versus waiting to June 12th when we have certainty. I'm seeing a couple of questions here, and it looks like one of them's talking about layoff. 5 instructional assistants laid off today at the high school alone. How many were laid off at Highland today also?
Effective today?
No, laid off. They received, again, call my 80% letters because I'm pretty certain that at the end of the year, this position won't be budgeted for.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But that's for the future.
It wasn't 5 at the high school. There's a total of 12 instructional assistants between the 2 buildings. So it's not the right number, but it is higher. How are teachers going to handle not having IAs? That's the huge question. We kind of talked about that already, and the amount of restructuring how a classroom looks, what happens in a classroom, how to make supports occur that are state required without what way we've been delivering them typically. Still haven't answered my question about you taking a pay cut. What is my salary? My salary is $150,000. A pay cut.
Is that with benefits?
That's my salary. So the benefit parts
On top of that?
pulls off of that. So
Do you
there's,
know, I mean, I know it's public information, but I don't know how you find out.
Well, when he was hired, it was 163 at the time.
total, yeah. Because the salary portion of that it got me at
So it was 163 initially.
With benefits.
With benefits,
With benefits.
okay. And I guess that's the question is what is it with benefits now?
Yeah. I can ask.
And then there was didn't you get a $25,000 raise recently?
The school board took me from about 125 and brought me up to 150 for some market adjustment.
So we're looking at about 180 something. What kind of study was done? That was a question I had for you guys. What kind of study was done?
The business manager was asked by the board chairman to find comparable school districts our size and look at salaries and benefits that were going on in those districts. And they moved me into the middle of that group.
So when you were hired, when he was hired, were you, and I don't know if you want to answer it, he does, because you said in the last meeting, you had several jobs when you were hired. You used to take care of the
Food service, special ed.
all that. So when you were you hired with that? You were
No.
163, was that part of your contract?
No, sped and food service came later. I had to pick those up. With benefits.
Are you aware that the Florence superintendent took a cut in pay to support his staff?
I haven't talked to Andy about that. Rhonda?
If, with that $600 that were over for the, 600,000, excuse me, that was over for, doing the floor and the cosmetics and that sort of thing. If it had gone over, that would have helped towards the furloughs, number one. So.
Yeah, it would, because if it's pulling out of federal money, it still was, we would have had to have it spent by the July 2024 deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have used it on whatever other one-offs till it was spent, because we don't want to give it back. We wouldn't want to put it against any positions, but it would have freed up general fund for the year. The problem is with the new revenue we're getting as a forecast for next year, we're having to scale back a lot of services so that we can operate within next year's revenue, which is adjusted, which is lower. But your question of the furloughs, yes, if some of this stuff hadn't gone on and we could have pushed one-off purchases there, we probably would have had more general fund clear. We might not be in the furloughing situation. Quick farmer math, 65, 90, 150, 175. It's 175, and I think our furlough impact is 256.
Oh.
So 75 short, but a lot closer. And maybe we could have borrowed at that point. Right? Borrowing 75,000 means you have to pay it off next year anyway, but we probably could have had a wedge or a bridge, I mean, to get us there.
Who oversaw the crew or whatever here at the district? The maintenance, you have a
Maintenance director?
Yeah, would it have been him? And he should have been aware for a some while, not until the job was done, that the increases were coming.
Yeah, we had pretty regular reports, and every time there was issues and problems, we would be told, and it's like, this keeps adding up. Are they done yet? There was a lot of upset, but before March 28th, we still were in a position where we could see that there's a pathway. We just need a trim. We need to be careful. We can land this plane with what we have going on. With the adjustment we got March 28th, that tanked us. That was a $400,000 swing that we can't recover from quickly enough. The plan of how are we going to absorb these unexpected costs of facility stuff, it was going to be tight. We were going to have to pay attention and work carefully through it, but we could do it. It was doable. It's not now, and we're dealing with furloughs as a result.
And you don't have an accounting manager? It's because I heard you say about the business manager from last year, where he had put some positions in the budget for the grant. That was towards the grant.
Yeah. Several years ago.
Several years ago, he had done that.
So last year we were coming through going, wait, there's 11 positions here that we were not supposed to have. So our discovery last year, that's why we knew we needed to start trimming and working this out. So until March 28th, we had a plan of needing to be able to trim ourselves down and deal with this overage of staffing that we had been picking up and that had been put into account areas that we did not want.
So he was he was a business manager slash accountant, or she has no accounting experience?
She was through the ESD. She was assigned to us as a business manager and met their spec. That was when we had the Douglas ESD to be doing the work. She was sold to us as qualified.
11 positions over, an overage of 11 positions, that's huge.
That is huge.
I can't imagine that somebody didn't step in before 3 years and say, this isn't going to work, especially with the enrollment going down.
And if they weren't put into ESSER the way that we probably would have seen them, and we would have been going, this is too much, too many. With that bubble of those ESSER dollars, and she tucked it in there against direction, that super unhelpful. I'm going to be diplomatic about that.
Yes.
And it doesn't.
That comes back to an accountant, having an accountant.
And I agree, because it's been frustrating this entire time. This is all hindsight 2020 stuff for us. I can't go back and undo this, and I still have to work on, here I am now, how do we take our situation going forward and maximize our opportunities for our students and all the pieces that we put in to make that happen. I wish that ESSER money had never been an issue, because clearly that is an element of this problem that we thought we had a management plan to deal with, then compound by the unexpectedness of the state's revenue adjustment. I wish I could have predicted the revenue adjustment, and I wish I could go back and unwind the tucking of 11 positions into an area that wasn't supposed to happen. Two areas, but now I have to move forward.
I understand. I experienced work furloughs where I was employed for 20 years with the Housing Authority of Alameda County, and we had to take 2 weeks furlough, and it was really, really tough, really tough. The manager was good about also making sure everyone took their furlough days, but you assigning the days, you know, that works out a little better for the schools, but that was really tough on families.
Isn't it up to you and the board and the budget committee to know what's in that budget?
Right,
So why didn't nobody know about that?
the personnel, first of all, the transition of that business manager quitting and leaving the profession right before the budget was due. The budget assembled very quickly. The business manager who was picking up the work is not seeing that, hey, we've got these positions here because they're dealing with putting the budget together at the funding level, and they haven't looked into every single line item. Very raced and hurried together. So had they had 3 months and time to prep a budget the way they normally would, I have no doubt they would have seen it and we would have addressed it then. We didn't address it till the second budget cycle.
How many years was it in there? Just 1 year?
1 year.
I was just gonna say, but you know what the staffing levels are.
And when I'm being,
Kind of be like a red flag, maybe.
every time we go for a position, conversation with the business manager is, can we afford this? What funds are we going to use? And we talk about that every time. And being told, oh yeah, we can do this. Oh yeah, we can do this. I guess you have a certain level of trust in the people that are hired to do those jobs, and you don't do everybody's job for them. So when you're being told this is okay, yes, we have this, don't worry about it. Okay, we're okay. We can post for this position. And a lot of them were IA positions, but not that matters, but that was a lot of our overage, and a lot of those positions tucked in there were for those. And like I say, I wish we could go back and have that not happen. And I wish that the communication adjustment would have been handled differently. Both have caused a huge impact on the schools, but on my students who's not going to be served as well by as many people, on my staff who go home and they're missing a huge chunk of their check, or in some cases are being laid off and have job insecurity about what am I going to do next. This is all my nightmare. And I have to sit up here calmly and try to talk about this and then go deal with it. This is nothing desirable.
It's not a pretty picture.
I'm going to catch up here. Laid off 12 IAs, but chose to keep your same salary. Your job doesn't benefit the students. Teachers need help. 22% of our students have IEPs or are special needs students. Yeah, teachers absolutely need help. The point on salary, I'm not going to ask a single person to take a freeze or a layoff, cut, next year change after we move forward. Everybody has their cost of living, their COLAs, their steps, and all the pieces that have been bargained for by their units and determined as important next steps for each person's progression. All the jobs since I've been here, my business manager, or the head business manager, has expressed a little frustration with this question, and she did some analysis. In 2018, when I was hired, until the point of time we're at now, the rate of increases for employees because of COLAs, because of steps, because all the rightful things that they've bargained and deserve and is fair has been, and she has a graph. The rate of pay that I've seen has been a lot less because I don't have steps and I've been down, down, down. So when the board made their adjustment, they put me back up to the same rate that everybody else had been getting that entire time. And in hindsight, Would the board have made that decision in an environment of pay cuts, or wanted something lower? I don't know. I don't think anything that we've done to negotiate anybody's salary, anybody's steps, anybody's COLAs wanted to see a situation that we're in now. We didn't anticipate, nobody knew we were going to get an adjustment, or that this unsustainable level. One of the units I remember very specifically saying, you need to pay us what we're worth, John. And if it means you trim a couple of us out of the bottom, then that's what it is. That was their rhetoric at the table, which is fine. Their unit gets to make those choices and decisions in bargaining because they need to see enough rate of improvement in their work to buy gas, to buy milk, take care of their families, and be able to sustain what they're doing. So do I bargain everybody to lowball and not pay them what they're worth? Or do I pay them what they're worth and have the intention of living within what we can afford? So in hindsight of this March 28th news, would everything have gone the last 2 years the way we've done it? I don't know. I think if people would have known this, we might have operated differently. We're here and this is what we have. And I'm not going to tell anybody that we're all taking pay cuts, and I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm freezing salaries. They never get those back. They never get caught up. Their families never get caught up. The rate stays low. And until we have more students and more revenue coming in, or a different revenue source, we're 3 years away from the golf course, I learned today. Until we have a different revenue source, we're not going to be able to afford more positions and pay the people who are here their fair wage. I mentioned the golf course. I got the presentation today about the Sparrow Park golf courses going in, and the short answer was essentially they're looking to be able to make the purchase in the summer. In the best case scenario, they could break ground in the fall. Most likely will break ground the following fall. And then it's an 18-month build. So we're 3 months away from anything being realized out there in terms of more residents, more houses, taxes, just all the pieces. And taxes are not a help to us because for every tax dollar we get locally, the state withholds that dollar because they cap it. In our case, it'll be 9.8 million now. If we get 200,000 locally, they're only going to pay us 7.8. If we get a million locally, then they'll pay us 8. They're only going to pay us to the same amount of revenue that they say we have to have. So improved taxes don't do us any good. It's just which source is footing the bill, local dollars or state dollars.
So I'm still
No, you had your.
the same path.
Go ahead.
I wanted to know about summer school.
Yeah.
Isn't there some money along?
And that's when we first heard there's $132,000 coming in this summer for summer school, and I can't use any of it for offsetting furloughs, and I can't use any of it for next year. So I am putting $132,000 summer school program together, but I've cut 8 days of school. That is the total mixed message, wrong signal. I can give the $132,000 back and just not have summer school, which I think is a bad idea. But the irony of that is like,
Are those Title I monies?
it's not Title I, it's a state grant. So you can only use it for the summer school this way. It has to be a minimum of 80. They've got very specific rules. And it's like, but 132 to offset furloughing, yes, please, that would have been the easy answer. The inflexibility of a lot of these grant dollars that the state gives us is maddening. We need to be able to make local decisions, and we can't because of some of these handcuffs that we get with programs. You knew the COVID money was going to run out. That's correct. Pretty soon we won't have any teachers. We'll have to have teachers to provide the required instruction for the core classes. To get a diploma, the graduation requirements remain the same. We'll have to have licensed teachers in all those subjects to give students the opportunity. And then you have to have all the stuff below them, kindergarten on up, to support that. Right now we have about 2 teachers per grade level. So 2 kinders, 2 first, all the way up. And the numbers of students we have in a class support about 1.5 teachers. You can't have half a teacher, but the dollars that come in that grade are not enough dollars to fully pay for all the supports in that second teacher fully. So we can absolutely pay for 1 teacher, but then throwing 38 kids in a class is ridiculous, and everybody suffers. As soon as you buy the second teacher, you don't have enough dollars to really support it, but you're having to just trim down and keep tight because you can't have the half teacher.
But you can have instructional assistants.
Instructional assistants, but in a class of 1 with 38, and then even 1 IA in there it's I don't know. We're looking at we're looking at some mixed classes. I mean blendeds where we'll do, so instead of 1.5 and 1.5, we'll do 3 classes of second, third, or 3 classes of 4, 5. And if we need to do something like that, that is a discussion it's out there. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition, but maybe that helps. And we're having to pay attention
many times before.
Yeah, and if that's what
For
it
that
takes.
reason,
If
so that
that's,
kids have a better teacher.
yeah, and that's going to require that we have teachers staying and be able to roll with those classes or repeat them, repeat with those kids. I mean, those kinds of models are part of our new reality that we have to be considering. And as we organize for the summer and we see what staffing we have, how many kids we have at the grade bands, our freshman class right now is huge. We absolutely can pay for 2 teachers in our freshman classes. It's like almost 60 kids, easy. They're almost too full. But most of our others were 38, 42. 42 is getting close to able to cover 37, 38. It's like that's not quite enough students in that grade band. We need a few more in that area. At the elementary school currently, a lot of staff are chasing students around that have behaviors, while the children who behave lose out their education. With less support next year, why should we send our kids back to these schools? The question of behavior is something that is very active with the principals and I. The state wants to be sure that every student is absolutely full-time in the classroom setting, and we have room clears. And I'm getting tired of room clears. I'm getting tired of the one kid able to shut down everything. And I'm getting tired of families not expecting some conformity out of kids. Bending over backwards and chasing kids around when they're not being coming to school in a proper fashion, ready to conform and learn, is starting to irritate me. And I know what the requirements are, and I know I'm supposed to keep bending over backwards, and I'm getting tired of these requirements. So I don't know what our plan is. My tolerance is thin and gone, and we're having this very, very current discussion amongst the administration, and I am leaning strongly towards change. And I don't know how long that goes. We don't need $1 million lawsuit right now.
Actually, how many fees have you had in litigation fees since you've been here?
This was our best year. We haven't had hardly any. We've had some years where we've been pretty active. And I don't know off the top of my head, Kim. We can look those up.
I mean, I know I can name it, probably 2 or 3 off the top of my head, but I think there's probably more. I'm sure you have insurance for it, but there's always a deductible for it.
Insurance for what?
For, just insurance for litigation. I mean, you probably have an insurance policy and you don't
Yeah.
pay a certain amount and then your insurance picks up the rest of
Yeah,
it.
PACE has, we're covered by PACE. All the schools, most schools are covered by PACE. And they want to provide a lot of guidance of do this way so you don't run a risk of being sued. A lot of PACE is going to tell me, John, bend over backwards, John, do the room clears and keep us away from lawsuits. I don't know, my tolerance level is waning. Teachers aren't going to stay here and none are going to want. That is always a fear. With the numbers of supports that are being lost, that is a fear.
Could you do headhunting yourself? Going to like the colleges, I know you'd be starting off with the lower level teachers maybe, but couldn't you get tables and solicit, jobs with job fairs?
They do have job fairs.
We do job fairs.
Or you guys go to the colleges for job fairs?
Yeah.
That's my question.
We've got supplies and pamphlets and we've not been this year. We weren't, at the start of the year, we weren't needing positions. And now we're trimmed down. I won't know what's going to happen over the summer. We've had years where we knew in advance multiple positions. The most common job fair is a big one up in Portland, the whole convention center up there.
And you guys go?
Yeah. Other states go to that one. I mean, recruiting is a big piece.
Oh, yeah.
You could probably spend a full-time job recruiting. And where do you put in the work? If you have a responsibility of special ed direction, you're here in the IEP meetings, and that's going to call a lot of time. And so you give up things, and when you give up things like marketing or research, because you're just doing the things day to day, it's
Are they still offering where teachers can apply to get money to help them with their house, or isn't there something like that?
Student loan forgiveness.
Yeah.
And we are a qualifying district, so teachers who do work here after a certain number of years of service, they can have loan forgiveness for their student loans. That's something. Yeah.
I'm kind of new to this, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and maybe I'm just covering old ground here. But one of the things that I'm hearing a lot since I've only lived here a couple of years, but this year I'm becoming more active. But what I'm hearing a lot from people that I know here in town is a lot of them seem to be sending their kids to Elkton, and I'm curious why they choose to send their kids all the way to Elkton instead of having them here. And some of the folks that I've talked to say, well, it's because of the discipline problems. Their kids aren't being managed and educated and so forth and so on. So they send them to Elkton. And I said, well, what's the difference between Elkton and here? And I don't see that. I mean, it's got a fairly nice facility down there, but I don't understand what the major difference would be quality-wise or otherwise compared to our schools here. That's one question.
I don't know that I would agree that there's a better product over there, and people wanting to choose to put their kids on a bus for 6 hours a week and lose 6 hours a week of their child's life sitting on a bus, because they pick up like 35 of them over there at the flagpole every day.
Yeah.
That's how desperate they are.
They made this big impacted decision. When the board and I talk about this, I need to be able to say, we have the better product here. Our schools are the better product, and whatever value that a family has selected that they want to be on a bus to Elkton, and it's that important to them. We need to be doing it better here ourselves. The whole time that we've been here, and they froze it for the 3 years, Reedsport has been either comprehensive or targeted school improvement, which means that when the state test scores are out there being used as measures, that we're not high enough. And we need our state test scores to be up there higher so that we're not in school improvement mode. And so the principals, when they're working with their staff and they were doing their trainings and trying to get to the point of students' education levels are up and test scores are up, and we become more marketable that we're not a school improvement or whatever standard we need to be addressing. I want those kids back, but right now I need to focus on our schools and being in a position that it's that our scores are up, that we're marketable.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying, is there some difference in the environment there that's different from ours here, or are you?
They're smaller yet. They're at a 1A level, half the size, and Mr. Bo is able to say, yes, come on in. Here's our waiting list, and skip people who are next in line. And I get complaints from families saying he won't let me in. So I don't know if controlling your sizes and your numbers is strategy. And we need to be at a point that we have a waiting list so we can control it that way. There's an element there. We need to be marketable first before we can go after bringing people back. I was told when I got here, and this is not a slight about anybody, that the Smith River families is what they were termed to me, take their kids to Elkton. And what that means and who they are, is fine. But because they've been upset with the schools for years, and there's kids still going there. So it's not just a Smith River family issue, but something keeps some connection or some piece of knowledge or some factor that they're choosing to do that. It's been going on for a long time. And could people have a long-standing upset with the district? Absolutely. We need to clean up our side of the street before we can say, well, we're ready to have you back. Please come back. Figuring out what all those nuances are is going to be part of that challenge. Being marketable, having our scores up, taking care of the kids we have first, that's the first priority.
Yeah. And the other, shortly after this was announced, there was another blurb I saw, something came across where they said, oh, by the way, we just found another $660,000 or something like that. And it was like, well, why isn't that being distributed to the school districts for, like a kicker?
Say that.
I was pretty sure it came out of the state, and that's where I was surprised, because it was like, oh, well, we had to cut everything for all these different school districts because we're doing what? And why are we sacrificing our children and our schools? And this is sort of reminding me of the way things were back in the mid '80s, when all of a sudden the spotted owl thing came up, and the mills were closing and everything was shutting down. I don't remember how long ago it was like he was here, but same kind of situation at that time. And it's like, first thing they did was cut the schools. They said, well, we got to cut fire, got to cut police, got to cut the library out, got to get rid of the school districts, money, they can all teach in one little tent. And I was surprised back then that there was no feedback or kickback or something about people saying, wait a minute, this is not right. You're cutting our essential services to punish us for the spotted owl. And it sort of feels like the same kind of thing is growing here again. And I feel unfortunate because at that time I was up in Lebanon, which was Milltown, and practically half the town was, wandering around the streets trying to figure out what they were going to do. And now it's here. I feel like this is something where they're like, oh, well, that's just reasonable. Or something along those lines. Maybe I'm a little bit cynical about a lot of stuff. But I just feel like that's,
I grabbed this piece of paper and I don't remember when I clipped this. I'm 99% sure it was the Hillsborough businessman. It was a big school district's business manager. And it goes from 2003, the biennium, up to current. So 20 years, 10 bienniums. And it shows, I mean, it just shows the amount of money in the pie, the 100% that is the state's money, how the amount of money, the wedge, the pie slice that is school funding just continues to shrink. And the prioritization of our state putting dollars towards schools. But we also see general fund lottery budget. We have the highest percent total amount of rainy day dollars socked away. 20% of our state fund is being saved in the rainy day. It feels like a need.
yeah.
I think that we need some restructuring, and as we're advocating and as we're talking to legislators and we're meeting in our groups, they need to spend some time with the formula and how they do this. And yes, we do things with 1.5 teachers and we combine grades and we structure it. Most of my advocacy has been, we need some floors. We need some basements put in where there will be some guaranteed minimum standards for 1As and 2As, because having half a teacher isn't a flexibility. When you've got 3 or 4 teachers in a grade level, you can start combining a little bit, classes going up and down. It doesn't hit the same way. That, I can't imagine how Powers is feeling in a 1A. If he can't have enough kids in a grade, how does he pull off a half teacher? Small schools need to have some guaranteed minimums, which can be in a formula. You can figure that out. They can do that, and us not be subject to the constant fluctuation. And it's not every year, but it feels like it cycles, and here we are again.
And yeah, I was going to say, this isn't anything new.
Right.
We've been talking about changing the school formula for as long as I've lived here, 30 some years. So
Their newest trick, and this annoys me to no end, the last 3 bienniums, and it shows it on this graph, these grant funds that are now being included in what they are calling the increases to schools. So as they're dealing with our wedge of the pie and paying us, they're paying us with grant monies more and more often, and those grant monies are very prescriptive. You will do this with these dollars. And when we're small and in the need of flexibility, but we're not getting it because we're handcuffed with mandates, our creativity is kind of getting dried up on us. We're having to be creative, but it isn't working. And where flexibility would be helpful, it's being taken away, but they're giving us more money. It just is coming with restrictions.
With your expertise and experience and board members, have you guys made calls to the Secretary of Education in Salem to, hear our problem? You guys would have more leverage, but as a group, I know that the teachers and, community members would too, but I'd like to know what, if any action you guys have taken, and I'll let the school board go first.
Go first.
Yeah.
I know our board chair has reached out to legislatures and everything. I haven't personally yet. I was out of town when all this stuff hit the fan, so I'm still catching up on things.
I was disappointed Ron Wyden didn't come.
He's supposed to be rescheduling.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be within the budget constraints, but we got to hit him up.
I talked to Boomer Wright on the phone, and he said he was headed up that day to a big meeting and try to get this mess figured out. So we got Boomer on it. So he's fighting for us.
Cool.
So
I got an hour Boomer's time also. Boomer's in the minority party, and he is a good advocate. He is a former school administrator and a former school superintendent. So when he talks about schools, he really knows what he's talking about. And he sits on the education committee, but he's in the minority party. And so when some of these big items are coming up, he's outvoted, and he's advocating for the right things. Dr. Charlene Williams is the director of Department of Education, and that same week that the March 20th stuff is being dealt with, I had time with her on the telephone. I texted her, I said, hey, this is not cool. Short and sweet, but she called me within 5 minutes. And twice now I've had the opportunity to talk to her since this has gone on and express my concerns, and that formula funding has to be relooked. And they've got a committee looking at it. I don't know if that's going to be political, just ignoring the problem, or if they're really going to look at it. I want to believe that because I'm talking to these people that's why this is happening. But I also know there's other school districts and other superintendents doing the exact same thing. So they're probably getting inundated. One thing that the Salem-Keizer School Board has sent out, and our board will see Wednesday night in their packet, is basically a letter of support. They're trying to gather signatures as their board, along with everybody in the state, calling on fix this, legislators, and a call to action, if you will, because the long session is coming up next year, and a lot of bills are going to be introduced, and a lot of decisions about the 25-27 biennium are going to start being set into place.
Thank you. And Boomer Wright has also been, since this has all happened, he's also said that we mismanaged our funds here at the school district.
Boomer said that?
Yes, he did.
Okay, he's not said that to me. I'll have to ask him. Have we thought about adopting a charter focus for the elementary that would be marketable and draw students to our district? I think all things are on the table to consider. I'm not sure. I guess I would want to hear some input about what ideas for a charter focus. And then we would need to have that expertise be in play so that it's attractive, that ideas are on the table. In the budgeting that we're doing, the flip side of all these cuts is trying to find revenue sources. Where can we draw a new revenue, or what can we pull in as new money that we're not currently expecting? And how does that help offset anything we're trying to do? So obviously drawing in more students would be ideal, because that would be sustainable in theory.
With that being said, I heard a rumor this week that your stepdaughter is going to a different school district next year.
I don't have any information on that.
Well, I'm the mother and she's here. So.
Yeah, but next year. Rumor has it she's going to a different school district next year.
No.
That's not happening right now. I mean, I'm not going to commit to what next year does or doesn't look like. But we live on rumors sometimes, which is a little bit of a problem. It's a little bit of a problem. And can I ask what that has to do with anything here?
Because he's talking about bringing students in here and getting students in here. And if this school district is not good enough for his own kid.
It is good enough for my own.
It is. I moved here for my kids. I brought them here.
Well,
For the last 5 years.
I'm just telling you what I've heard from several people.
Okay.
And if that's my question, if this school district is not good enough for your children, why is it good enough for everybody else?
You're trusting some teenagers right now.
No, I'm not.
Some of the adults maybe would be the reason why we wouldn't be here.
I'm not trusting teenagers.
Then where's that? So you're hearing a rumor. So out of a 15-year-old's mouth, right?
Calm down,
Out of a 15-year-old's mouth.
Well,
Don't make things personal. This is about, you most certainly did. This is. You made it personal. You made it about my daughter. But it's personal.
It is, because it affects, if your kid is not wanting, if you're not willing to have your kid go to this school district,
Kim and Amanda,
Yeah.
for the purposes
I
of
moved- I
the
moved
meeting,
here and brought my
if you
kid.
guys would like to have the discussion, I think to stay on point with the question and answer opportunity of this, and if that needs to be a side conversation, but saving the space. And so again, questions about what's going on. I guess some calendar dates. Next Wednesday, 4 o'clock is the budget committee. That's the first time that group of people are going to sit down and begin working through the proposed budget. The proposed budget is online right now. It's on the website, 2024, 25 proposed. So people can go on, look at it and begin previewing what's in there. May 29th will also be a 4 o'clock budget committee meeting. That's the second one. And then June 12th will be the first board meeting after those have happened. Now, next Wednesday, May 8th, the 4 o'clock budget committee start time is going to stop 5:20, 5:25, because they're going to go into their 5:30 regular board meeting. That meeting agenda has been shortened just about as much as it can be to make that an abbreviated meeting day. Then they will reconvene the budget committee directly after, maybe a 5-minute break, 10-minute break, but they're expecting the budget committee to go long and to take into the evening. So it will be split with the board meeting in the middle. So a 5:30 board meeting for sure, 4 o'clock start time for sure. Probably, I'm guessing, a 6 o'clock-ish reconvening of the budget committee, but to be accurate, just stay in line.
And you're talking about on the 8th or the 29th for all of that?
The eighth sandwiches the budget meeting.
Okay,
The 8th sandwiches the board meeting. The 29th doesn't have a board meeting.
got it. Is it possible to get for the budget meeting, one of them anyway, some information that is comparing districts as far as salaries? And I'm really talking about more administrative than classified and certified, since they.
Superintendent specific?
Yeah, I think so. With districts that are comparable in size.
Yeah. I think the business manager's already done that. Can I buy your pen?
I know. it's
Absolutely.
all- Making the comparisons.
COSA does a annual budget salary document. And so everybody who submits it throughout the state, they put all the comparables out there, and that's a common tool, but you have to really kind of wade through it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think anything that people want to discuss is probably fair and appropriate. If there's going to be anything that requires the business managers to prep materials, if it's asked in advance, so they have time to do it rather than try to dig it up in the middle of.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Of all the work time.
Because if you ask a question in the middle of a meeting, there's no way anybody can gather that information. That's why I'm wondering.
Mhm.
How does it affect the kids' time in school?
Impact.
Yeah, the furlough days.
Mhm.
Don't the kids have to be so many days for the year?
Yeah, the number of instructional hours is how the state of Oregon measures it, and it's one of the Division 22 requirements. So K-8 has a number, and I can't ever remember without looking it up. 11-12 has the highest number, and seniors is close to the 9-12, but it's a little bit less. So there's 3 groups of instructional hour minimums. The K-8 students for Reedsport after furlough and the seniors after furlough will have enough minimum hours. Now, that's minimum. More is always better, right? So we're still cutting 8 days. That's an impact, but at the minimum level for the Division 22, we're compliant. Okay. Now, our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, 9, 10, and 11, will be short. I think the number was 13 hours. Will fall below the minimum. And that is non-compliance for Division 22. When we were first looking at this, we called the state, okay, here's what we think is happening. What do we need to do? The initial answer was you need to go to the state board, you need to make the report, ask for a waiver. They called back 2 days later, no, when it's due to budgets, there's no waiver, you just need to report it and come up with a corrective action plan. So the report for Division 22 is an October activity, you do it every year, and you find all the deficiencies, you say, okay, we didn't meet this requirement, here's our plan, didn't meet the other requirement, here's this plan, and we have to design ways to avoid it. The plan is we don't want to do it. We're not going to cut any more furloughs. We're going to live in our budget. I mean, we already know what our corrective action has to be. We just have to report it in our annual Division 22 statements. Yeah, it's still lost time, and that's what's important. It's paperwork and it's a rule for the law, but it's lost time.
Yes.
Are they budget committee meetings, are they public or?
100%. Open public meeting law applies. There's portions where they want to receive comment. Then the June 12th board meeting, there is a budget hearing. So right before they get to the point of adopting the budget, there's a second round of community comment for people to come in and say, okay, this is what the budget committee talked about doing. Here's my community comment on that. And then once that's done, they'll close the budget hearing and they take action. Yeah, this room here. Both are open public meetings. And as you're seeing on the screen, we put it up there. So I think right now it says plus 22.9, so about 30 people online. This is a pretty high turnout. This is some of the highest turnout we've seen these last 2 weeks. Typically, we don't have very many people on the screen and nobody in the room. So it's been nice to get input, and at the same time, it's unfortunate it took a crisis to get us to the point where people are giving us input.
I haven't had a chance to look over the budget, all of it yet, but how's athletics playing a role? Can you comment on that at all?
We're looking to find revenues for that. So we've not had sports fees. We're going to be looking at trying to reintroduce sports fees. That's a barrier for some kids, and we took them out because we didn't want that to be a barrier. If we cut a team or sport, we have to be sure that we're paying attention to Title IX, equal representation for boys and girls, so that we'll have to balance things. Right now, we're not seeing many cuts. And Steve was mentioning that the students were saying that it's the extracurriculars and it's the electives that are so important to students to want to show up and have an interest in what's going on in school. Start cutting those and they just have to do reading and writing, they're less interested. So very few. The electives are going to have to adapt at the high school with fewer staffing, but at a programmatic level, there's no cuts at those programs, but there will be impacts at those programs. We're still going to try to do all the same things we've been doing because the kids want
them. Going back to what I said earlier about the problem back in Lebanon, back in the mid 80s, and that was at the same time I had a couple of stepkids who were going to school in Albany. And when all these cuts started happening, like I was referring to, they started cutting out all these extra programs, but the kids were really enjoying and learning from. And one of my stepsons had a problem with classroom learning. He just couldn't sit in he didn't absorb the material by looking at a book or watching a classroom teacher. But he could do really well on a monitor, which back then was like a brand new thing. But his main thing, where he had such a good time and he enjoyed going to school, was when he was in wood shop. They used to have wood shops, metal shops. They had a bunch of other things involved. Another one of the schools there had a band. And even though it was a small school, they had glommed together enough students who were able to blow a horn or play a drum or whatever. And they actually ended up marching in the Veterans Day Parade. So, I mean, there was possibilities that those programs provided for these kids who had a hard time in the classroom. And it helped them to, in some ways, when they got out of school, for whatever reason, they were able to at least have a skill that they were able to use. Some of them went to work in some of the factories or mills or some of the other types of activities that are around there. And it seemed like that was a really important part of it, but it was just like one of those broad stroke acts things they did. And it was basically got down to where there was no outlet for those kids. And that's where a lot of them started going down.
Yeah, they cut, you commonly see the freshman programs getting cut or the junior high programs getting cut. And it's difficult to get back. You don't build and you don't generate that interest young enough that you keep them when they're older. This is not good, and anything we're doing is wrong. Our attempt to preserve programs is something that we've leaned on, and even they're still going to look different. Yeah.
Seems like there's a lot of distance between here and Salem. It's the gist of it is, it was back then, it was the same thing. It was, even though Lebanon, that area was closer than we are here, but still, you might as well have been in Idaho.
Yeah, the east side of I-5.
Yeah, it was like, and it was upsetting, even then. And that's like, when this happened here, that's why I said, I think I'm going to get more involved. I want to get into this because I have 2 grandkids who go to school here. I'm concerned about them because they have issues with some of the behavior, some of that kind of stuff. But some of it is just that they don't have a way to focus on classrooms. But they do really well with some of the other activities outside of the classroom. And they're smart kids. And I hate to see them have a deficit because of something that happened up in Salem. It's difficult for me to even keep my cool now. But it's a hard thing to see it happen, and I'm trying to figure out if there's something we locally are able to do. Whether you mentioned the different sources of revenue, I have no idea what that means. You go around begging for money from the businesses or what. If there are other people who are willing to volunteer to put time into, who have the skills and the ability to teach these kids some of these outside activities like you were talking about, or even some of the service organizations that are around. I really hate to see this happen because it puts you guys in a total bind, all of the parents involved in a bind. The kids are the ones who end up suffering because they are not getting what they deserve.
100%.
And then we want them to move on, we want them to be good citizens, and they're having a hard time. And it's not their fault.
I'll say it again, because you were at the high school with the fire situation. But going with what you're saying, that hook needs to happen earlier than at the high school or junior high. It has to happen at the elementary school. Because there are kids there that are not necessarily, academics may not be their thing.
Well, that was where
That's where it needs to start.
They were in the middle school or below.
Absolutely.
And when they still had some of those, but they had to basically kind of bootstrap the operation to get those things in there.
Yeah.
In spite of the fact that, like with bands, they didn't have the instruments, they had to beg, borrow, get lent from some other place, to even have the instruments for the kids to play.
But we do have a lot of organizations in this town and a lot of folks that are very generous. That I think if they knew, you know, that we've got this second grader that can't afford, you know, to get a harmonica to play in the band. They'll kick in, and there are scholarships. Same thing with sports. Those kids that couldn't afford the fees, there are organizations that would help and have helped many times, many years. So there is hope, but you have to tap it and you have to have those priorities.
Yeah, I think communication is a big deal for, especially in a small town like this. I mean, a lot of us are able to plug into different sources of information, but at the same time, there needs to be a much more bring this thing up to the attention of the people who live here, the parents, the ones who are involved with the students, those kinds of things, so that there's more of an awareness, I think. Just somehow, I mean, we're dealing with this, like in one of my organizations, we're dealing with this kind of a thing because we have people that should be in our organization who don't realize it's even here. We say, well, how come they don't know we're here? Well, you know, we need to make more visible about what we're doing, and maybe we'll be able to recruit more people to our.
When I go to Rotary and I look in the room at the people who are there and all the volunteering and all the energy and efforts and scholarships, I respectfully refer to them as the OGs. These are the people who have done a lot of things and annual events, have high levels of participation, and they're all getting older. And I say this with a ton of respect. And as they get older and they get tired and less able, or they just kind of want to take a break and not continue to have to do the thing year after year, and there's nobody stepping in behind them.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm looking at the Memorial Parade. Yeah. It's been struggling the last couple of years to get people to pick that up. And, you know, Jim and Mary Ann, been doing it for years. I saw what it looked like first when I got here, and it's kind of having to reinvent itself. And who does it? And a lot of work goes into those things. But our need for volunteering and those efforts can't always rely on the people who've always done it, because every year they get a little bit older.
Yeah, well,
and with all the respect to all those people.
Exactly. This is what I'm referring to the League for the American Legion, and that was our meeting last night. And we're all, we have one Korean War veteran in there, and then the rest of us are all Vietnam War veterans. And we're all getting where it's hard to walk, hard to stand, hard to do this stuff, and we've basically got it set up to where we're still going to be able to do the flags along Main Street and then over at Hahn Park. And we've got the cemetery thing set up, so we're going to be putting flags on the graves out there. But it's difficult because a lot of us, and some of them, even like last night, got one guy said, he says, I'm going to have surgery and I'm not going to even be able to lift anything. He said, I'll be there. And I think that's happening a lot now. We're having a lot of these, and the younger guys that are coming back, if they're still in one piece, are involved in trying to raise their families. They're trying to keep their head over their, out of the water. And so they're busy with doing that. And I don't blame them one bit for not being involved. But it is getting where the resources are scarce for us in these service organizations as well. So.
May I ask you a question? Is there a possibility that some of our kids at the high school could earn community service hours by helping?
I know they've talked about it. I'm not real familiar with it because I haven't done any liaison work with them, but they do talk about some of the programs we have, like the scholarships for Boys and Girls State. They have the oratory contest in the fall. These things involve, I mean, it's not a whole lot of money, but it's something that the students can, if they enter those things. But we've talked with the counselor over there, and so far we haven't had any applications for any of the students even showing interest.
Just to volunteer to help put up the flags and things like that?
That would be good.
Yeah.
We were Boy Scouts from Gardner were doing it but this year we have not had much contact. He's the scout leader there has not been communicating with us. So we basically last night decided we're just gonna go without him. But if other kids wanted to show up, or somebody was able to corral a few of them to come out there to the cemetery, we put out about 300 or 400 flags out there.
Is this at the Masonic Cemetery?
Yeah.
I asked that same question at the last Memorial Day meeting to one of your members, and they said the problem is most of the time when they put the flag out, it's on a holiday, and so the kids are not either around, or they don't want to take their day out on the day off to help, so that's
We
what
put
I
them
was
out
told.
we put the flags out on the cemeteries on Friday. And then we have the ceremony there on Monday. And then on Tuesday, we take them all down. So it's during that period there,
And you're talking about Memorial Day.
on Memorial Day.
Yeah. But the other holidays, probably the same thing, but if they were gonna earn community
Service, yes.
credits, then
I think it would be wonderful if there were some kids that wanted to be involved and there was some sort of, what we used to call chaperoning type of thing involved, where somebody would transport them back and forth. I'm sure talk to the commander and have him say, man, he's probably.
Your counselor is a good contact to make announcements about community service. They make them daily on their announcements where the community service opportunities are at in the community. And I've seen posters on the walls. And it's just kind of up to the kids to say that's something that sounds interesting to me and I want to participate in.
Yeah.
But yeah, her name is Kelly Luck. That's the counselor. She's a good point
Oh,
of
I know
contact.
her, yeah.
Okay.
I'll talk to her. Actually, probably see her Sunday.
That's a good question.
Yes, a couple things that came up. One of them was on volunteerism at the schools. Are we still getting a high volunteerism, especially at the elementary?
I think our numbers of volunteers since COVID have decreased.
We haven't got those back up.
Yeah, I don't think they're up as much, but I know there's a bunch of field trips going on and I'm aware that volunteers are helping out with those. Haven't done an audit to make a direct comparison. My gut is it's down. I think it's starting to come back.
And do they still have a parents program over there?
Highland Parent Organization, yeah. And I know they're doing activities and movie nights and after school events, so it's there. And I'm not sure, again, I have to do an audit of kind of what it was before and where it's at now, if it's still as robust as it was.
I'm sure the teachers would know, they would have to give them that.
I think the SMART program started up again. Didn't the SMART program start up
Yeah,
again?
smart readers are in there.
So it started up again.
That's how I started in the schools way back when.
And it was during COVID, everything was canceled, but they started, I think it was this year they started again. So, yeah.
And my next question, talking about the SMART program, it's a reading program, so our libraries, I know that our libraries are at risk of not being open for next year. And do we currently have a library open at the elementary school?
Right now at the elementary, the librarian resigned and had some personal things to attend to. The teachers can open it and go in, but it's teacher driven at that model. And so the big question is going to be getting books reshelved and just some of the maintenance pieces and how to make that happen. The teachers having to open the libraries and help students making book selections, check out books, somehow account for getting books returned. And that's a definite area we're going to see a lot of changes in next year. That's an area that is having to be trimmed up and is just one more thing that is being piled on a classroom teacher.
And would you say that that would have a direct impact on our reading levels for children if we're not teaching them the love of books? If they don't have access to that?
The teachers are going to be able to have access still. It's just they're going to have to be helping the students check it out. The pattern right now is there's been a full-time person who can be in there and be efficient. So the teacher is more I don't know, hands-off is the right word. The teacher doesn't have a different role and function in taking their group of students into the library because the staff person there can do all the checkouts or maybe help a student find a book, be a second person. So instead of having 2 adults in there working, down to 1. And that's just going to make it less efficient for sure.
I guess that's where your volunteers maybe can fill in and.
That was one of the things we talked about is getting books reshelved. And hopefully we will be able to recruit volunteers to help with that because that's a pretty busy job.
I was a library assistant in California in an elementary school, and I ran the library in that position. But I don't know how I feel about volunteering into a position where that person has been laid off. You know, a position has been taken. I don't like that idea. Yeah. But I mean, at the elementary level, that's different if she's not, she resigned and it's open and it's a little bit different and it's not budgeted for next year.
Yeah, those 2 positions are not budgeted. One, the resignation is attrition, but
yeah.
So at the high school would be the same thing, like with teachers then would bring in students.
yeah, I think the first assumption would be English language arts, but I think any teacher doing reports and wanting to access books and library materials, everybody's going to have to be trained because I know the shop teacher goes in there for stuff. They're all going to have to know how to do it. And our discussion has been, if everybody does it just a little bit different, what happens to the library and how do we maintain that continuity of this is how this thing functions? If everybody has just a little bit different tweak of how they're using it and keeping the library whole, that's a concern.
Maybe it's possible to have one position and have them split between the 2 buildings. So the library would only be open like part of the time.
My hope is growing back the positions that we've lost, because, and then finding what our highest level of need is and serving that as quickly as we can. I'm very worried about what next year is going to do and look like and how to provide all the functions and supports.
And who do you have? Do you have someone specifically assigned to grants? We had a personnel analyst who did grants only and looked them up and applied where needed and.
Not looking at grants the way I had a grant writer when I was in a different school.
Yes.
And that's all she did all day was look for grants, find grants. Not in that capacity. We have state federal reporting that helps half-time to get documentation that we have to turn in as related to grants. And a state school grant is not a grant the way that we typically used to think of them. It's that assigned state money where you'll teach this way, you'll report this information to us. So even that level of grant reporting isn't really even the same thing. We've got some teachers who look out for grants, and when they find them, they get extra opportunity for something because they found a grant that will help their classroom or their students with a thing. The board has to accept grants. Sometimes some grants are more burdensome than they are valuable. And so there's always that, what is the amount of stuff being asked in the reporting or the thing that you were going to give up for the money that will come. So it's always kind of with a careful eye that we're not getting ourselves buried just for a little grant, whereas is it really giving value to our students?
Right. Thank you.
Rhonda B says, yes, my daughter's helping put out flags at the cemetery. And tell the school to put this in the announcements. I know many kids would love to help. Yeah.
Good.
I was sharing that I had a little trouble. I had seen the town meeting, and then I wanted to go back in and look at it on the website. I don't use Facebook, and I had a hard time finding it until I looked for scheduled meetings, some of the headings there. But I actually had to click on furlough, and then it popped up about this meeting. And I don't know, it just seemed like it was hidden a little bit. I know it wasn't on purpose.
Yeah, we used a robo dialer this time. We had feedback in the last meeting to send it out to our families. So I think, and I'm pretty sure we send it out to all of our families, but that doesn't.
I'm a grandma.
Yeah, so anybody who would be community might not have received it. But
The reader board is a good idea.
yeah. So we tried to at least double down a little bit on that based on some feedback last time. We're still setting it up a little fast. I mean, this has only been a week. So by the time you put it up, it's only a couple of days and the people are busy. I mean, the need to try to be communicative and try to answer questions and be available versus too much time waiting till the next meeting happens. At this point, I think the plan is to get to the budget committee next Wednesday, 4 o'clock start time, and probably have some sort of a meeting, probably a week or so after that one, just to kind of stay in the loop, but let that budget committee happen and see what that is. Chew on it a little bit, see what it tastes like, and then about a week later, we can do some more of this. The library is the heart of RCCS. This will be devastating loss to the kids. I like the suggestion of keeping one library tech for both libraries. Hope the budget committee will see this as important. I think we're probably at a lull here, so I want to thank everybody for their time. Are there any final questions I should be working on, or if not, I don't have a gavel.
Are you meeting here again next week?
4 o'clock will be in this room on the 8th, yes.
Just the budget committee?
That's a budget committee, and then 5:30 will be the school board meeting right here also. It'll be 10 people on the budget committee, 5 people on the school board, and then we will reconvene the budget committee right afterwards, 6 o'clock-ish, and then carry on that work again until whatever hour.
It could be a long session.
This will be one of the longer ones, I think. I mean, I don't have the magic wand to see ahead in the future, but
I would certainly hope it would be more time spent working on that than trying to make it hurry.
yeah, this one will take a lot more time for sure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.